Have you ever wondered what medals COD 2 protagonists have earned? Well, since you clicked on this video, I'll assume you do, so we'll be doing just that today. But firstly, you guys gotta get caught up with the rules, including you channel veterans, because my World at War video was somehow 3 months ago, and I added an extremely important rule that will impact the series going forward. But before we get to that, we need to start with Rule 1. I'm only going to be accounting for medals that existed during the war, so modern British, Russian, and American awards have no validity here. Second, I will be following each country's rules and customs as best as I humanly can, and don't worry, I have a friend who speaks Russian, so all of my research for the Soviet system was done in Russian. Third, when it comes to being wounded, only what we see in cutscenes and scripted gameplay segments will count, because if I did it any other way, then Taylor would have more Purple Hearts than every American World War II veteran combined. Fourth, regardless of real-world accuracy, what's shown in-game will trump all else. That doesn't mean I'll be ignoring real history entirely. In fact, it'll help us fill in some gaps, but for the most part, we're sticking to in-game events. Fifth, I value your input, so I'll be making corrections to my World at War episode at the end of this video. So, going forward, put any corrections or add-ons in the comments, and if I find your reasoning compelling, I'll address it in whatever COD game comes next. And sixth, if you like this video, then subscribe. If Spooky Deer's videos are about how terrible we are, mine are about how awesome we are, and I'd love for my channel to be just as awesome by hitting 5,000 subs. With all that in mind, let's get started off with Vasily, which this is actually his first day in the Red Army. And lucky Vasily, because his first day he automatically qualifies for the Defense of Moscow medal. Yeah, we're starting off obvious. As long as you fought at the Battle of Moscow, this award is yours to wear. But other than that, nothing really notable happens here. We're surrounded by allies. Destroying the Panzerwerfer isn't done in any heroic means at all, and the fighting is just standard combat, so I can't give any extra awards here. Wow, after actually reading that sounds so uneventful. But honestly, Vasily is lucky to have even survived the entire Battle of Moscow, because the dude literally only got, what, 5 minutes of training? And keep in mind, Vasily was there on December 16th. The Battle of Moscow only ended in April 1942, so this man is basically a self-taught war hero. And unfortunately, the game doesn't dwell on this any further, because the next mission is set a year in the future at Stalingrad. Not like it'd matter anyway though, because 1, the 13th Rifle Guards were never at Moscow, and 2, even if Vasily fought at the Second Battle of Kharkov before going to Stalingrad, it's impossible to verify any bravery from him for obvious reasons. So we're just gonna move on. The start of the second level, however, is pretty normal as far as a war goes. We just clear out some fascist-held buildings and nothing crazy happens. But it's what happens after this that starts Vasily's underappreciated legacy. When we get up to this building, Lieutenant Leonov informs us we're the only line of defense between our aid station and the Germans, meaning countless Soviet lives are at risk. So, we hold our ground in spite of a numerically superior German force counterattacking, and we not only didn't give an inch of land back to the enemy, but we begun our own counterattack that inflicted great losses on the Germans. For this valiant effort, Vasily and likely all of our comrades here will be awarded the Order of the Patriotic War, 2nd class. But that's not all. Maybe this was a coincidence, but listen to this dialogue during the counterattack. The soldiers follow Vasily's lead, and even paying attention in gameplay, you can see they only move up as Vasily does. This allows us to push the fascists all the way back to their strongpoint, and Vasily bravely is the first man to charge inside the strongpoint and gun down almost every German defender, even eliminating their machine guns. Undeniably, Vasily's bravery inspired every man around him, and it led to the total destruction of a German stronghold. So for this, I will be awarding Vasily the Medal for Battle Merit. Funny story, by the way, originally this was gonna be an Order of Glory, but that award didn't exist until after the Soviet campaign ends, so I had to change a bunch of stuff this whole chapter. It took a lot of time, by the way. But that's me being a failure. Vasily, on the other hand, will continue his great bouts of success, because the next mission is set the exact same week, and Vasily will immediately qualify for the Order of the Patriotic War First Class. Oh yeah, this boy is getting upgraded, because one of the ways you earn this medal is by repairing comms equipment that was destroyed by the enemy. And using our now intact comms, we get reports of German armor in the area, so we go to dispose of 3 German light tanks. And because Soviet medals are written like video game achievements, this alone will net Vasily another Order of the Patriotic War. First class, by the way. The rest of the Patriotic War medals will be first class, just so you know. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, because just listing the destroyed tanks severely undersells what Vasily has done. This Panzer III is literally destroyed because Vasily, entirely on his own by the way, jumps down to the ground, kills every German in the area, and runs up to the tank and throws a sticky bomb on it. For this absurd level of bravery, I am confident in awarding Vasily the Medal for Courage. It also helps to know one of the stipulations for this medal is leading by example, and it's evident Vasily is doing this because our comrades only jump down to help after this extreme feat. And even in spite of this help, Vasily continues to disregard his own safety and destroys both remaining German tanks with the same sticky grenade method, all the while gunning down multiple Germans along the way. Oh, and by the way, despite being a private, Vasily was given control of a squad this entire mission for some reason. No doubt, this is the batshit insane exploits you clicked on this video for, and for his exceptional leadership and undeniable bravery, again, it's only right Vasily be awarded the Order of the Red Banner. And just so you remember, by the way, Vasily is a self-taught war hero, and he has the Soviet Union's second highest award at the time already. And we're not even done with this day yet, because the next mission at the train yard takes place hours later. So, what exploits will Vasily perform here? A lot, because even the start of this mission places us in a batshit insane scenario. We have to crawl through this pipe to the train yard and just hope the Germans don't find us, which they do and immediately kill everyone except Vasily. And whilst under intense enemy fire in this pipe, Vasily manages to take out 2 mortar teams and an entire row of fascist defenders, no doubt a major benefit to the Soviet cause. And upon our arrival to the train yard, we will continue to aid this cause because the Soviet troops once again only move up as Vasily does, which makes him the first man to enter the station. We then capture the station, hold off a German counterattack, and under orders, Vasily once again charges a tank and sticky bombs it. First off, Vasily's actions 100% contributed to a successful combat operation, and he more than deserves the Medal for Battle Merit. But perhaps more importantly, these events qualify for another Valor Award. Which one? Well, the Soviet Rus box achievements list suggests Vasily should receive another Medal for Courage. Vasily not only survived a fatally flawed strategy as we just saw, but he still managed to absolutely kick ass. But this isn't the end of Vasily's exploits today, because we still have to clear the remaining Germans out of the area. In my playthrough, whilst my comrades were dilly-dallying outside, Vasily stormed the enemy's forward position on his own and killed every German. You know the crazy thing too? This may be the most normal thing the man's done all day, and even still, this event was kick-ass enough I'll be giving Vasily another Order of the Patriotic War. After all, one of the stipulations is being the first to break into an enemy forward position, and evidently this helped a lot because our comrades outside cleared the remaining objectives by themselves for the most part. After this, we then go a month forward in time to January 15th, 1943, and our last 3 missions are coincidentally all set the same day. So, can Vasily live up to the reputation he just made for himself a month prior? Well, this mission starts off pretty crazy. Here, Vasily dashes right across a German tank, grabs sticky grenades, again, guns the enemies down, and destroys the tank in his usual fashion. After this, side by side with Lieutenant Volsky, we use a machine gun to aid our comrades' advance when suddenly another tank appears. Probably fearing for Vasily's life after that last stun, he tells us not to be a hero. So I was a hero and did the same thing as before. Look, I could be stingy and give Vasily another Order of the Patriotic War, but it's clear Volsky likes us one, and the man literally has to warn us to not be a hero. It is only right Vasily be given the Order of the Red Star for being an example of courage through exemplary service. And reminder, we have 2 levels left with both being the same day, so my work isn't done here yet. However, the next level is literally only 3 minutes long with pretty standard fighting, but noticeably the Soviet soldiers, like many times before, are following Vasily's lead. We then go right into the city hall for our last level. We start off clearing out the fascists and taking the building, only for a massive counterattack to occur. Using a sniper rifle, Vasily prevents nearly every machine gun from even being set up, and the German attack is slowed majorly as a result. However, due to their large numbers, only so much can be done, and in the course of this hectic fighting, some Germans break right back into the city hall. So, not wanting to lose our position again, Vasily heroically runs downstairs by himself and dispatches every German in the building. When the enemy finally gives up the assault, Lieutenant Volsky simply refers to us as a fearless comrade. Combining the events of this day, I think Lieutenant Volsky will recognize Vasily as being deserving of 2 more Valor Awards. For fearlessly leading our comrades into the city hall, ensuring the success of Soviet operations, and total disregard for his own safety on numerous occasions, it is only right Vasily receive another medal for battle merit and a 2nd Order of the Red Banner. What a legend, and Vasily deserves to be remembered more than he actually is. And the best part is, we're not even done, because with the conclusion of this mission, I will finally be awarding Vasily his hard-earned medal for the defense of Stalingrad. And whilst we don't know Vasily's fate after this, we can safely assume he fought until the end of the war, given how, passionately he writes in his diary. So, if we follow the 13th Rifle Guards in real life, we can see Vasily would have a medal for the liberation of Prague, since that unit went southward and had no involvement with the capture of Berlin. Funny fact, by the way, the liberation of Prague actually happened the day before Germany surrendered. And you know what a German L means? Vasily will be receiving a well-earned medal for the victory over Germany. And finally, I've been putting it off this whole time, but there is one more very special medal Vasily deserves. For frequent and repeated acts of heroism, taking the lead on multiple occasions across Stalingrad and ignoring constant threats to his life, Vasily will be receiving the Gold Star Medal to become a hero of the Soviet Union. And because every Gold Star Medal comes with an Order of Lenin, not most like I previously thought, Vasily will also be receiving that. Combining everything, this would probably be Vasily's canonical rack of medals. And if you aren't familiar with the Soviet system, no, your eyes aren't deceiving you. The Soviets literally did just wear multiple of the same medal if they had them. But the medals and how they're worn isn't what's important here. What's important is Vasily was a normal man who became a hero. He may have had a rather unremarkable start, and I wouldn't be surprised if this video's beginning disappointed some people, but as the war progressed, Vasily easily became one of the most decorated infantrymen in the Red Army. He is, without a doubt, a legend, and it's a damn shame he didn't have a Rezhnov to cheer him on. But we're just getting started, because now we finally move on to the British campaign, and Sergeant John Davis is legendary. But before I reveal all of that, I want to ruin my viewer retention real quick by plugging a small channel announcement here. I understand, due to the length of this video, some of you will have to stop watching and come back later, so if you're about to do that and you're a semi-regular viewer of mine, skip to this timestamp of the video first. I have some really important announcements I don't want my regular viewers to miss because I'm going to be letting you guys have a say on this channel's first ever merch. It'll be a challenge coin, by the way, so nothing boring and basic like a shirt or mug. But that's it, back to the video. So because the British award system has never been featured on the channel before, it's only right I explain the peculiarities of their system first. To start off, the British seem to view awards as a much more prestigious thing, so as a result, the requirements to earn their awards are actually quite strict, and even to this day, a well-decorated Brit is a rarity because of it. It's also probably because of this perceived prestige that there were a ton of medals during World War II that only officers could earn. So, things like the Military Cross and Distinguished Service Order simply can't be earned by Davis because he's an NCO. Similarly, a lot of their gallantry awards were duty-specific. For instance, the Conspicuous Gallantry Medal could only be earned by sailors, merchant mariners, or soldiers and airmen who served afloat with the Royal Navy. So because of all these limitations of the era, we're limited to these 4 gallantry awards for Davis, lowest to highest by the way. A mention in dispatches, the Military Medal, the Distinguished Conduct Medal, and the Victoria Cross. Now that may not seem like a lot, but I promise, as we get through this chapter, you'll see those few awards mean a lot. And because the British hate video games, I guess, their gallantry awards aren't hyper-specific like the Soviet ones are. So as a result, this means the British awards are extremely subjective, so to help with that, I've taken to reading real World War II era citations to make my judgments. Of course, as we'll see soon, COD makes this extremely difficult with impossible scenarios, but I'll try my best. And boy, is Davis doing his best because he's opening up with the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the UK's second highest gallantry award. But hopefully you knew that from paying attention to what I said 1 minute ago. In any case, what did Davis do to already be so kick-ass? Well, he turned the simple mission of destroying a German fuel depot into a straight massacre. Before we even get to the fuel depot, in this narrow-ass trench, Davis comes up on 4 Jerrys. He then proceeds to smack one upside the head, then just sprays him and the other Germans down all in one go without a damn care in the world. And once we get to the actual destruction of the fuel depot, Davis then runs seemingly blindly in the smoke where he guns down another German and gets into a ferocious hand-to-hand engagement with 2 more and wins. And as this is happening, an explosive barrel next to him is shot by the Germans, so while shooting at the Jerrys, Davis jumps down to the fuel depot and as bullets rain around him, he sets the TNT to destroy said depot. And on his way out, he guns down even more Jerrys, bludgeons another bloke to death, then darts into the other depot and blows it up. And no, we're not done, because Davis then goes into this bunker with another lad and more or less single-handedly kills the remaining Germans to retreat a load of stupid maps. So yeah, there's no doubt Davis is a goddamn hero from the get-go, and this is reinforced by the fact it's clear from Price's reaction to seeing him that Davis is a well-respected soldier. And it isn't just Davis who's extremely capable, by the way. The next level is set the exact same night, and we actually see the entire 7th Armored show gallantry in the face of the enemy. With no reinforcements until the very end, we have to defend this village from a ferocious German counterattack that includes literal waves of infantry and even armor. What fucking numerical advantage were you talking about, by the way, Price? Now, unfortunately, this also means what Davis does here is rather diminished because he's merely holding out like every other Tommy here. However, given the ferocity of this attack and the direness of the situation, I would bet a good few of these men are deserving of at least a mention in dispatches, which leads me perfectly to talk about this very strange award in the British military. See, unlike all other British awards, this one actually doesn't have a corresponding medal. Simply put, it's just a mention of gallant actions that don't warrant a higher award. So, okay then, why even bring it up if it doesn't have something to show off? Well, actually it does. A mention in dispatches comes with this fancy little oak leaf you can add to the medal or ribbon of an appropriate campaign award. And if you haven't earned any campaign awards, then the ribbon for it is just simply black with the oak leaf, which is actually super rare, and the only photo I found online of it was this. But in any case, this should mean Davis gets a mention in dispatches, right? Well, no. Remember how I said earlier the British see awards as more prestigious? Part of that is an emphasis on conspicuous gallantry, meaning the British will often take separate events that span over the course of hours, days, and even weeks to determine a soldier's qualification for a medal. And because levels 1 and 2 take place on the same day, there is no way in hell they'd give him both. They would just go with the higher of the two, which I determined earlier. This also means, by the way, the amount of medals I display will become really sparse this chapter because I'm gonna have to explain everything of note. And sometimes that will span multiple levels just for the purpose of me justifying a single award. But Davis isn't going to be cock-blocked of a mention in dispatches for long, because the next level sees us do some pretty standard fighting with some low levels of gallantry. Namely, we clear out a bunker on our own with only a couple Germans in it, and we bludgeon one to death in the process, you know, as Davis does. For COD standards, that's pretty modest. In real life, not so much. But the next highest award, literally called the Military Medal, has citations that are actually insane and way more valiant than this. So I think giving Davis a mention in dispatches is a fair assessment. What medal will the oak leaf go on? Well, you gotta watch and find out, old chap. Sorry. Now, moving on to this very iconic level, Davis will net himself a very iconic award. What would that be, you may ask? Well, let's see if you find out. But firstly, I want you to notice that Captain Price is nowhere to be found. That means we can make the assumption that Davis has been given command of the platoon, which makes sense since in the British military a sergeant is second in command of a platoon. No idea where the lieutenant is, maybe he got fragged, but in any case, despite having 30 soldiers at his disposal, Davis is always at the very front of the action and no doubt is a fantastic leader. Because during the attack on the flak guns, our soldiers fight ferociously to take down the Jerrys, with Davis leading the charge. This culminates with Davis storming into a building to single-handedly kill the remaining Germans and relay the news to the Royal Navy that the coastal artillery is disabled. After the RN destroys those German supply ships, Davis leads his men further into the village when suddenly an MG-42 opens fire on the platoon. Davis, in response to the attack, popped a smoke to try and conceal his men, and he even managed to get some lucky shots and kill the German gunners, but it was too late. 5 Brits lie dead. We press on after this disaster, but the Germans remounted the machine guns and once again opened fire as we came out of the alley. This time, however, under the cover of smoke, Davis dashes across the road on his own and once again kills the gunners, undoubtedly saving British lives. But we're not done, because immediately after this, 2 Germans appear from the smoke where Davis bludgeons another guy to death and guns the other down. In the chaos of this encounter, Davis then sprints forward unknowingly into another German machine gun. He takes a shot, wounding the Jerry, and with little consideration for his safety, charges the gunner and beats him to death. Then we single-handedly clear out another house and steal some German intel. Look, I feel now's a good time to bring this up, but even though I play these games in God mode for the sake of collecting footage, I try to play very casually. But sometimes, things just happen, as you just saw, and this set of events is impossibly heroic. For fearless bravery, saving British lives, and stellar leadership that led to the capture of this town, by the graces of God and the King, Davis is more than deserving of the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest gallantry award. And let me put this into perspective. In real life, of the 15 million people who fought under the British Commonwealth, only 181 of them ever received the Victoria Cross. This is a remarkably impressive feat, and after reading a bunch of citations for the VC, I am confident this is the correct choice. But not to piss on Davis's parade, the next mission could not be further from the inverse of this because we lose a town we captured. This leads to an honestly impossible vehicle chase segment where Price is constantly berating McGregor, and on the way we kill an unfathomable amount of Germans. So, already no amount of citation reading is gonna make this an easy pick because this is just impossible, like I already said. Now, one could say this alone makes someone here eligible for a Victoria Cross because they have been given out before for successful retreats, but that's the issue because when we finally leave the armored car and get swarmed by Germans, Price orders us to abandon our own men. Every instance of a Victoria Cross or Distinguished Conduct Medal I've read that involves a retreat has the recipient almost single-handedly being the reason said retreat was a success at all. In many cases, especially VC cases, the recipient is even the last man out and manages to do first aid and save retreating soldiers. We do none of this. There is literally nothing more here except a disastrous defeat. Hell, we can even say the failure to save our men is an embarrassment for Davis because he's already proven he's more than skilled enough to save those men, but he just follows Price's order. So with all the information I have at hand, I simply cannot bring myself to give Davis another VC or DCM for this disaster. But even still, the armored car chase is noteworthy and definitely more than a mention in dispatches, so I'll weigh it in my decision after we get through the next level. And luckily for me, the mission to retake this village is literally set the next day. Unfortunately for Davis, I can only imagine knowing he's capable of the impossible means yesterday's failure will likely eat him away with guilt, so today he will almost certainly fight to redeem himself for his fallen mates. As we roll back into the village, our tanks come under fire from German flak guns. So Davis takes his platoon, because again Price is nowhere to be found, and successfully leads his men into destroying all 5 guns. This, undeniably, is a huge factor in our ability to recapture the village, since it allows for our tanks to traverse safely. But let me not neglect the finer details of this battle, because earlier Davis's men were pinned down under enemy fire and were struggling to advance. But we managed to find a side route that takes us right up to the Jerry, so Davis and a few other Brits advance and knock out the German MG. And despite intense enemy fire from all sides, Davis mans the MG himself and returns the favor, which allows us to safely advance ahead. Everything hereafter is pretty standard combat, and we destroy the flak guns, like I said earlier. So, what about the medal? Look, I'm hard-pressed about this one, guys. On one hand, we abandoned our mates to die, and that is anything but deserving of gallantry, yet Davis is also one of the main reasons why we recaptured this village at all. And there was still that whole escapade with the armored car. I could maybe see arguments for a DCM, but I just can't let that whole thing about abandoning our mates go. But it also can't be denied Davis still fought hard. So, I'll give him a military medal, the UK's second lowest gallantry award, right after a mention in dispatches. I think that's a fair compromise, but if there are any British veterans here, specifically ones who know a lot about discontinued awards for some reason, then let me know what you think. But we need to move on, and things seem to be on the up actually, because we capture yet another town, and once again Davis is in control of the platoon because I guess Price is a lazy bastard. This time around, however, barring an ambush at the start, the combat for most of this level is once again pretty average. Though, there are a few moments of gallantry that definitely warrant some kind of award, most notably this little incident here where Davis was leading his platoon forward and out of the blue an entire swarm of Germans advances at us. In yet another moment where things just happened, Davis guns all of them down and very minimal British casualties occur as a result. And less unintentional is right here at the end where Davis mans the AA gun and rips the Germans to shreds, is what I would say if COD wasn't full of shit. Sorry, I don't give two fucks what happens in game right here because these guys should be turned into red mist. So, I'm making an executive decision here and now to say this AA gun firing BB pellets is non-canon. Especially because we down a bunch of planes right fucking after, so explain that one. All in all though, pretty good work from Davis here as per usual, but nothing overly heroic. I think we can safely say the events of this day are deserving of a second military medal. But hold on, what is that bar on the medal and what the hell is that flower thing on the ribbon? Well, simply put, this is the British method of indicating multiple awards. The medal gets a bar added to it and the ribbon gets a rosette. So, we just add more and more as Davis continues to kick ass, right? Well, not exactly. Unlike the American award system where you can borderline indefinitely add stars or oak leaves to your awards, the British limit their rosettes on the ribbons to just one, and very rarely two. But in the case of this era, it doesn't matter if you get one gallantry award or 100, your ribbon is only gonna have one rosette. However, there is no limit to the amount of bars you can add to the medal, which works out fine anyways because the British almost never wear ribbons anyways. And you know what else works out great? The fact we're done with Africa. Fucking finally. So with this part of the war concluding, Davis will rightfully earn the Africa Star, which was awarded to any Brit who served in North Africa. To be exact, you had to have served at least one day from the dates between June 10th, 1940 and May 12th, 1943. And because Davis is in the 7th Armored Division, this means he's a part of the 8th Army, so we can add an 8th Army clasp to the medal and a silver 8 on the ribbon. For my America-loving patriots, by the way, I implore you, don't check how much more of this chapter is left, because now we finally move on to Davis's time in Europe. I'll start off though by hitting your dopamine immediately because fighting here qualifies Davis for the France and Germany Star. To earn this one is the same concept as the Africa Star, only this time if you served in the Northwest Europe campaign between June 6, 1944 and May 1945, you qualify for this award. Interestingly, however, the only clasp for this medal is for the Atlantic campaign, so Davis won't be getting any fancy attachments to his ribbon or medal this time around. So, since we're stuck to the land, let's just get right into our first mission in Europe. And Davis is really starting off strong here because I believe he's deserving of a second DCM. Why? Well, because during this intense firefight, a German MG is raining hell down on our men. So, Davis pops a smoke grenade and uses the cover to move into a more favorable position to kill the gunner. Oh, and of course, along the way, he kills a few extra Jerrys. After the MG is down, Davis then uses the now cleared area to begin a flank of his own, and we swiftly mop up the remaining Germans. But we're not done yet, as you probably imagined, because immediately after this we run into another set of fortified Germans. Here, Davis will once again pop a smoke and use the concealment to clear out an enemy-occupied house. Upon going back outside, Davis then completely exposes himself to MG42 fire to kill the operator not once, but twice, which invariably saves British lives and helps our advance. But it's not these actions that make Davis such a hero today, it's the very end here where McGregor and Davis somehow manage to single-handedly survive a small German counterattack. Now, it would be one thing if this was just a platoon of infantry, but no, we get chased by a tank along the way. And yet, Davis is either just that fucking awesome, or that tank crew was completely inept, because McGregor outdrove them and Davis destroyed them. All that just to ensure some of our American cousins are able to get proper medical treatment so they have a chance to survive the war. Just wow. And the game even implies we stop the counterattack fully, because it's never brought up by anyone else. And you may be wondering, shouldn't this be worthy of a second VC then? Which, by the way, would make Davis the 4th person in history to ever get the award twice. And to that I say, most likely. And it's here I want to discuss the difficulty in choosing gallantry awards, because despite my best efforts, what ends up warranting a DCM or VC can very often blur together. Reading these citations, there were a number of times I thought to myself that someone was shorted a medal. But the simple reality is, high awards like this are at the discretion of whoever is writing the citation, because a lot of it is based on politics and subjective meanings of quote extreme gallantry unquote. But that doesn't mean I haven't spotted some minute details in the citations that can make or break a case for a VC. In almost all cases I read from World War II, a Victoria Cross has a scenario where everything is going wrong, and yet somehow one person near entirely on his own, and often at his own volition, is able to either mitigate the damage extensively or even outright turn a would-be failure into a success. A DCM, on the other hand, still has near impossible scenarios, but they almost always have some support, and the gallantry isn't sustained for a considerable period of time. But again, this is all incredibly subjective, because I've found VC stories that sound more like what I described as a DCM and vice versa. So, taking this into consideration, whilst what Davis and McGregor did is absolutely insane, the counterattack was really small, and one inept German tank crew could make this possible. There's also the fact that, again, this was a huge team effort, and I severely doubt any British command would want to give both men the VC or give one the VC but not the other. So, they would probably pick to short both men instead. Again, you're free to talk me into a correction in the comments, and I'll address it in the sequel to this video, but we have to move on. I've wasted too much time on this. And for the next medal, we need to combine 2 missions for 1 entry again, because they're both set the same day. And right off the bat, you should be able to guess what happens by now, because there's a pattern. Davis cleared out a squad of Germans from this house by himself. Yeah, that happens an awful lot in this campaign, doesn't it? Anyways, shortly after, a Panzer rolls up and begins to block the road, so Davis, under orders from Price, darts across the road right in front of the tank, clears out another house, finds a Panzerschreck, and destroys the Tiger all by himself. Oh, by the way, ich werde jetzt mehr Deutsch sprechen. Mein Deutsch ist nicht gut, aber ich brauche kein Englisch in Deutschland und Österreich. Fuck Swiss German though, that shit's complete gibberish. Where was I? Oh, right. After this tank is destroyed, we fight our way through the town where, once again, another MG-42 opens fire on us. Before a smokescreen is even deployed, though, Davis runs right up to the occupied house and kills the MG-42 operator whilst under enemy fire. He then clears the house by himself, again. After this, we move into a barn and take up defensive positions to prevent a German counterattack. During the chaos of the fighting, another tank rolls up, and as Davis is lining up a shot with his Panzerschreck to destroy it, the tank fires and Davis falls to the ground floor. Despite his very likely wounds, Davis is just too good for medical attention, I guess, because he runs right out into the field and gives the Jerry's absolute hell. And we're not done yet. The next mission, as I said, takes place the same day, so let's keep going. During this level, we do exactly as we've been doing, kicking ass and clearing entire houses on our own. And a lot of this time around is actually suspiciously dangerous tasks Price is giving us, like being ordered to go down this narrow-ass alley by ourselves under enemy fire. But then again, you know, maybe that could just mean Price knows we're awesome and trusts us, which is what I would say until we get to this church, where despite the Germans literally still shooting at us from the outside, Price orders Davis to still move up on it. And mind you, by the way, the Brits only move up after Davis makes it safe. I'm not accusing anyone of anything here, but why is Price so suddenly giving Davis borderline suicidal tasks? Really makes you wonder. But what doesn't need to be wondered about is Davis's heroism. Maybe he did it to stick it to Price, but rather than continue the slow frontal attack of his mates, Davis instead goes around to another entrance, lobs 2 grenades into the church, and once more wipes out an entire squad on his own. What a bloody hero. After this, we mop up any remaining Jerrys in the area, with Davis of course emptying houses on his own and leading the charge all along the way. He even has enough honor to not up any war crime counters. But more importantly for us, during the push on the final objective, Davis is ordered to find a flank on the German position. And when he does so, I shit you not, Davis kills near every German outside without even so much as a bullet being fired back. We then push up to the house where Price once again gives us a suicidal order: clear out the house by ourselves. And when Davis does so, he ends up killing a resounding 11 Germans, and multiple of those kills were from bludgeoning the buggers to death because we ran out of ammo. After this, the day is won. Look, in spite of Price very obviously trying to get us killed, Davis invariably is still a kick-ass hero, and he survived when all odds should have been against him. His entire company can verify the events of today, and when you combine everything that happened here on a real-life human scale, not Call of Duty, Davis is absolutely worthy of being the 4th man in history to receive the Victoria Cross twice. And this living legend will continue to be with us for one final mission. We do the usual we've come to expect of our valiant hero, emptying German-occupied homes on our own, flanking and destroying a mortar team by ourselves, and all the usual. But the British campaign, in spite of me being sick of it by now, has found a way to end on an absolute high note. Firstly, we have to get into this farmhouse, and by now I'm 100% sure you'll be able to guess what happens, so I'll just let my footage speak for itself in the background. What I really want to tell you is what happens during our defense of the farmhouse. Here, we have to hold out until reinforcements arrive, but that's easier said than done because the Jerrys throw an entire company's worth of infantry at us that's also backed up by armor. And in one last effort to get us killed, Price orders Davis to flank the enemy all by himself whilst under intense fire. And I do mean that, because there are still dozens of Germans out here, and Davis is just expected to push through all of them for the sole purpose of pulling a Vasily on this tank. And he does it. Davis did the fucking impossible. He pushed over 100 meters into the enemy lines and did a Vasily on this tank. It's unbelievable. And truthfully, every man in Davis's company owes this man a beer, their life, and a night with their wife. So you know what? I'm gonna do it, and Price can get fucked to hell. Davis will be the only man in Commonwealth history to receive the Victoria Cross 3 times. I will not elaborate further because the man's actions have spoken for themselves this entire war. But we still have 2 more awards to cap off this legendary tale. First, we have the 1939 to 1945 Star, which is simply recognition for Davis's service in the war. There is a clasp for this medal, but it's for participation in the Battle of Britain, which I ruled as improbable he'd have been there. Because Davis is clearly a career soldier, and it's also very likely he's been in the 7th Armored for most of his time in the army, that means he was most likely in Egypt protecting the Suez Canal before the war started, so no fancy decorations on this one for Davis. But we have one last medal Davis would have earned, and it's the War Medal 1939 to 1945. Whilst it may be basically the same thing as the previous award, it comes with the resolution to a cliffhanger I've held on to this whole chapter. Remember the mention in dispatches? The oak leaf will go on this medal, allowing Davis to fully show off just how much of a legendary badass he really is. And with that, here it is, Davis's probably fully complete rack. What a hero, and I don't mean that lightly. Seriously, use Traces of War and go through Victoria Cross stories because they are truly the stuff of legend, and the fact Davis qualifies for 3, in fact you could probably even make the argument for more, is nothing short of insane. But with that, I don't know if it's obvious to you guys, but I am sick of talking about the British. Literally, half of this video is Davis. I'm done. And thank God I'm saving Welsh and the side characters for their own video, otherwise this chapter would be even fucking longer. So let's hurry up and move on to America. And our Yankee protagonist for this chapter is Corporal Bill Taylor, and he starts off with a bang because his first award this video will be a Purple Heart. The dude literally had no control of himself for almost a full minute after he got flung into the air due to his landing craft being blown up. So there's no way he wasn't unscathed from this. But whatever injuries Taylor got here clearly won't hold him back, because after clearing the beach, Taylor will be awarded the newly created Bronze Star. This was, upon its creation, the lowest award for valor in the US, and was often given out for single minor feats of bravery by the army. What minor bravery did Taylor do? Well, under the cover of smoke, he ran up to a German building with an MG-42, and upon getting up to the wall, a single hidden German soldier began firing at him. In spite of taking enemy fire, Taylor lobbed a grenade inside the building and killed the Kraut with the MG, and he then turned over and killed the hiding German. That's definitely a brave moment, but it's nothing unbelievable, so I think a Bronze Star is more than sufficient. What's fully believable, however, is that some of you are wondering why I didn't give Taylor a V device to denote valor. And that's simply because the V device didn't exist until December 1945, so it just wouldn't be appropriate to add on to this award at this exact moment. Now, moving on to this moment here where we find the coastal guns, did you know this was actually based on something that happened in real life? To make a long story short, what happens in-game is actually very similar to what happened in real life, that being the coastal guns were actually found by complete accident. Only in real life they were found by First Sergeant Leonard Lamel and Staff Sergeant Jack Kuhn. Lamel melted the guns with thermite to render them inoperable, which is exactly what we do in-game. However, a difference between COD 2 and real life is that Sergeant Randall actually helps us disable the guns, whereas in reality, Kuhn was covering Lamel, not directly helping him. When everything was said and done, they booked it out of there, and both men were praised and awarded heavily. Because their actions undeniably saved countless American lives, Lamel was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and Kuhn was awarded the Silver Star. Because we as the player are assuming the role Lamel did, it's only sensible we acknowledge reality by awarding Taylor the Distinguished Service Cross. And to people not familiar with American award customs, you're not mistaken in noticing that Taylor just got 2 Valor Awards in a single day. This is because, in the American system, conspicuous gallantry basically means separate events that happen one after the other after the other. So, American Medal of Honor stories will, from what I could tell reading World War II citations, always take place on the same day and usually within the same hour too. And the same goes for all other American Valor Awards as well. So, whilst it's obviously extremely rare in real life, you can receive multiple separate Valor Awards in a day, which is quite a contrast to our British cousins who avoid such scenarios like the plague. And if none of that makes sense to you, then you're in luck, because by some miracle of God, I was able to capture footage of what Americans define as conspicuous in the next mission. During the end bits of this level, where we have to retreat to the cliffside, Taylor, in spite of a fierce enemy presence, rushed forward to clear a destroyed house on his own so his men have a chance to escape. Taylor then falls back and gets into a trench with the rest of the squad, where he immediately gets on an MG-42 to mow down the Krauts. But then, the Germans throw up a smoke screen and another retreat is ordered. Despite this command, Taylor holds his ground as the Germans attempt to advance under the smoke. And in the chaos of the defense, a grenade even lands a meter away from Taylor, yet he doesn't stop firing and only falls back when he's the last man out. And in case you think I'm playing too heroically here, then I suggest you pay attention to this dialogue in the game.
Let's go! Get back to the orchard! Taylor, you too! Get back to the orchard! Let's go!
And that isn't all, because when Taylor finally retreats from this trench, Sergeant Randall has this to say.
Taylor, let's go! You gotta keep up, Corporal! Come on, Taylor, we need all the firepower we can get! Your squad needs you, let's go!
All of this just signifies to me that the canon way to play this mission is by being a badass. And the kickassery doesn't even end here, because once we fall back to our final defensive line, Taylor will pick up a bar and continue to face the Krauts head on. This combat continues for several more minutes, and the German counterattack only ends when our pilots swoop in to give us much needed support. And keep in mind, in real life, of the 225 Rangers who fought here, only about 90 remain capable of fighting by this point on June 8th. And in-game, this puts Taylor amongst them. This is especially incredible when you remember Taylor was almost certainly concussed at minimum from earlier, and yet he still carries on his duties with incredible proficiency. The guy is also so hellbent on holding his own line that Randall has to tell Taylor specifically 3 times to fall back with the others.
Taylor, back to baseline Charlie, now! Move!
So, for me it's obvious, Taylor is a hero who displays consistent valor against the enemy. So, I will be awarding Taylor a second DSC, and if you're wondering what that bronze oak leaf is, that's how the US denotes subsequent awards. But we're not done yet, because for their actions at Point du Hoc, the 2nd Ranger Battalion was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation. This, by extension, means Taylor will also rightfully earn this ribbon. And let me get sidetracked for a second here, but I think Reagan's speech at Point du Hoc is one of the best speeches in American history. I won't play it here for the sake of pacing this video, but do yourself a favor and go listen to it at some point if you haven't, because the speech really is that good. And I love that the devs included it for the end screen of this level. But let me not get carried away praising that, so let's just move on to the next level. Here, Taylor will perform a COD 2 classic, Empty Houses by himself, and he'll do it a lot. No, really, I mean that, because it seems like half this entire village has its occupants killed by just Taylor, and he does so extremely efficiently. Grenades are thrown, hand-to-hand combat was frequent, and in the instances Taylor did have support, he was still at the front gunning every Kraut down. Originally, I was stupid enough to only chalk this up to a silver star, but after reviewing my footage, I'm a fucking idiot. Give this man a 3rd DSC at once. Clearing houses is incredibly dangerous, and for Taylor to do so much in so little time and in the ways he did is impeccable gallantry. But not everything is about gallantry and heroism. Sometimes it's just nice to have confirmation of where someone fought. And to represent that, we have the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal. Yeah, I'm not calling it that. So for the remainder of this video, it'll be the EAM. But this is effectively the American equivalent of the British Campaign Stars, exact same concept, just a slightly different execution. You earn one of these for partaking in any of the US Army designated campaigns during the war, and would you look at that, our first 3 missions all take place within the time span of the Normandy campaign, so that's an easy one for Taylor. And whilst we're at it, let's just knock out a bunch of these in one go. If you paid attention at the start of this chapter, you probably noticed that Taylor is a corporal. This is important because it means he was already an experienced soldier, and therefore we need to make some speculations about his service. And how do we do that? Easy. Look into the real world. We know that, in real life, the 2nd Ranger Battalion was formed in April of 1943, and they only took the best volunteers who were already serving in the army. So, from that alone, we already know that Taylor must have seen combat in Africa, because otherwise there's no way in hell he'd have been allowed to be a ranger. So, because of that, we can safely give Taylor a 2nd EAM for very likely service in Africa. Unfortunately, however, the potential for more campaign stars is impossible to know because, disappointingly, we don't know what division Taylor was in prior to becoming a ranger. But even within the scope of when we play as Taylor, we don't 100% know the full story because the next mission we'll look at is set 5 months after the previous level. So what did Taylor do in between these missions? Well, going back to real history, we can see the 2nd Ranger Battalion actually did fight at the Battle for Brest, so going off of that alone, we know it's quite likely that Taylor fought there too. We just never play it. So because of that, I think we can reasonably assume Taylor will have a 3rd EAM since this battle falls under the Northern France campaign. And capping off this marathon of EAMs, Taylor will get a 4th for partaking in the Rhineland campaign because the next mission takes us right to the Battle of Hürtgenwald. And here, Taylor almost becomes the 40's equivalent of a drone strike clip because he nearly gets blown up by a mortar. And this time, I am fully certain Taylor received some form of visible injury because he's the only one falling behind everyone else due to the blast. So, for this very likely injury, Taylor will be receiving a 2nd Purple Heart. But this injury won't be stopping our boy, because when Taylor manages to collect himself, he pushes up with the rest of the squad, continuing the fight. Eventually, Taylor pushes up with Randall to the front of a German-occupied house, and out of nowhere, 4 Krauts come up behind them. Despite the impossibility of surviving this scenario, Taylor single-handedly disposes of every single enemy. He then takes immediate action and storms the house he was initially attacking and kills the last 2 German occupants. And keep in mind too, this all occurred with a concussion at best and open wounds at worst, so the fact Taylor was able to do any of this is miraculous. All without medical attention too, so Taylor, I can only conclude, has insane pain tolerance. Because of all this, I think we can safely give Taylor a silver star. The actions performed weren't crazy enough for another DSC, but it was certainly worth more than a bronze star, and I hope you all agree with me on that. Moving on, our next level sees us fighting our way up to the famous Hill 400. To start off, a German bunker has the high ground and we need to somehow continue our advance up the hill. So, Taylor pops a smoke grenade, and under the cover of the smoke, he successfully rushes up the hill and eliminates some of the Germans on the ground. Taylor then turns his attention to the MG and lobs a grenade through the window, killing the gunner. And no, we're not done yet, because as our allies are pushing up the hill, Taylor finds himself in a good enough position to finish off the remaining German defenders outside, which allows our men to move up the hill safely. For valiantly risking his life to ensure our advancement on the Hill 400, it's only right that Taylor be awarded a 2nd silver star. But we're not done yet, no, because Taylor's kick-assery today has only just begun. When we're a mere stone's throw away from the top of Hill 400, the Rangers come under fire from 2 MG42s. Taylor, braving enemy bullets and disregarding his life, runs across the battle lines and disposes of the enemy machine guns from the right flank. After this already impressive feat, Taylor continues to spearhead the charge up the hill, killing plenty of Germans along the way. And once the top of the hill is reached, Taylor immediately enters the bunker alone and clears it out by himself. And not long after this, Hill 400 falls into American hands. For this conspicuous, consistent, and life-threatening gallantry that ensured our capture of the hill, I will be awarding Taylor a 4th DSC. However, despite our kick-assery, the Krauts haven't had enough, and they've determined they want this hill. Beyond just charging our position, the Germans are also sure to deploy mortar teams to give themselves the best chance of killing Taylor, but it won't be enough. Because braving the enemy and running right up to their lines, Taylor dispatches of every mortar and neglects his own life to do so. Shortly after this, the Germans launch a massive artillery barrage on the hill, but once the smoke clears, Taylor wastes no time getting right back into the action. Upon seeing a huge wave of Germans pushing up, Taylor mans an MG42 and mows down the Krauts before they even get near our wounded. At one point too, a grenade is even within half a meter of Taylor, and yet he still braves the assault and keeps firing. And we're still not done, because right after this, 2 half-tracks make their way up the hill, and without orders, Taylor uses a Panzer to make quick work of the enemy vehicles. We then go right back to the MG42, and after a bit, another half-track appears, so we make quick work of this one as well. And then, after another artillery barrage, a German tank makes its way up the hill where Taylor again wrecks it without even a second thought. And then we do it a second time, and the third time we even straight up eat a tank shell and still destroy the Kraut armor without even breaking a sweat. All of this effort not only ensured we held the hill, but also saved our wounded. In real life, no man ever received the Medal of Honor at Hill 400, but given Taylor's exceptional bravery and actions that went well and above the Call of Duty, I think it is only right he be given America's highest award, the Medal of Honor. And a large part of me wishes the American campaign ended here so this video can go off on a high note, but alas, there's one level left. For the entire first half of the mission, it's pretty standard infantry combat with nothing spectacular really occurring. That is, until this extremely clean solo mop-up of a house happens that I just wanted to show off. I think by now you can kinda follow the logic I'm using to determine these medals, but we had plenty of support, no injuries occurred, and this isn't even close to the craziest thing Taylor has done. I'd say this is an easy second bronze star. But capping off this video, we have one final bout of extreme heroism. Maybe it's because I got impatient, but Taylor under extreme enemy fire managed to pull a Vasily on not one, but 2 tanks. And wouldn't you know, there's a Medal of Honor citation that runs somewhat like this, because Taylor did chase down a tank just to destroy it with TNT. So that's a slam dunk second Medal of Honor, right? Davis can suck it because he's not the only impossibly cool war hero now, right? No. I actually didn't know this until I began researching this part of the video, but from 1919 all the way until 2014, it was actually prohibited to earn more than 1 Medal of Honor. Yeah, you can thank famous Marine hero Dan Daly for that, by the way, because Congress didn't want to give him a 3rd for Belleau Wood. And because of this, much like Daly, Taylor's additional Medal of Honor will have to be reduced to a 5th DSC. And you just know this sack of shit discrediting us is none the happier about keeping our boy down. But you know what? The Colonel can get screwed because Taylor is gonna be too busy finalizing his chest candy. First, we have to acknowledge this last mission takes place during Operation Plunder. This was a part of the Central Europe campaign, so that means we can give Taylor one last EAM. And because this is his 5th campaign, the award will have a single silver star rather than 5 bronze ones. Next, we have the Army Good Conduct Medal. This one is straightforward. Don't be a moron or get caught being a moron for 3 years. Personally, I severely doubt Taylor was a bad boy, and because I assumed he started his service in 1942, and it's currently 1945, this is an easy award for Taylor. And lastly, and well-deserved for Taylor, is the World War II Victory Medal. Though, unfortunately for Taylor, he'd probably have to wear the World War I Victory Medal since the World War II one was in extremely short supply. But fortunately for me, PNG images are limitless. So here it is, Taylor's complete and impressively badass rack. He is an American hero through and through, and it's a damn shame he can't have more than 1 Medal of Honor. But there's another American hero who has been shorted, and this time it was actually by me. Remember back when I promised you guys corrections the world at war? Well, let's just get started with Miller. Thanks to this commenter here, it turns out Miller destroying all those Japanese tanks at the airfield is actually bordering on something that happened in real life. Private First Class Jerry Fessler was awarded the Navy Cross for destroying 3 Japanese tanks at the same airfield Miller does in-game, so that's a slam dunk Navy Cross for Miller in my books. And since it's visible on the comment, let me address the Medal of Honor for Miller here as well. And simply put, I will not be changing my verdict for the actions at Shuri Castle, because if you were to actually read the citation for Corporal Charles Kelly, there's a lot more going on there than with Miller. I'll have the citation on screen for you now if you want to read it and compare with in-game events, but me personally, I don't think Miller did anything worthy of the Medal of Honor. And lastly, quite a lot of people brought up Miller could have at least 1 silver star for a multitude of things across the game. And looking back at both my footage and World at War as a whole, I actually agree. My personal pick for the Silver Star, though, won't be Miller taking the flamethrower from the dead guy, since that was under orders. Instead, it'll be for the actions at the level Burn 'em Out, because Miller goes into multiple Japanese dugouts and, well, burns them out. Mind you, too, he does this alone, and flamethrowers were infamously dangerous to operate, so whilst this is all within the scope of Miller's duties, it shouldn't be denied he showed great valor here. And so here it is, Miller's redone rack to properly award him for his service. I really should have brought this up in the original video, but a lot of why I was being so conservative has to do with the fact the Marine Corps is infamously assaholic about awards. People outside of the military definitely wouldn't know this, but the Marine Corps both back then and today will literally knock Navy Crosses and Silver Stars down to Bronze Stars just solely because someone is a private. And I may have gotten a little too carried away with that idea, and I'll try to do better with whomever our next Marine protagonist is. But let's move on to Dimitri and conclude this segment. And I'm happy to say I don't have anything I want to correct, because everyone seems to agree that I did a phenomenal job with Dimitri. Really, I just brought this up because I want to highlight this guy's comment. Yeah, I have no idea how long it took you to type that, dude, but you definitely deserve recognition in a video to some extent for all that. And I honestly can't be bothered to think of a good segue for this, so let me just get straight to the point and tell you guys I have some really important channel announcements I want to make. Look, guys, I know I shouldn't be expecting anything, but I'm gonna make the bold assumption that this video will be the one that finally crosses me the threshold to 5,000 subs. And in celebration of that, I want to launch my first ever YouTube merch, and I want it to be something unique. So, I had this design for a challenge coin drafted up, and I want your guys' help with finalizing the design. One way or another, we all deserve to celebrate this milestone happily together, and whatever you guys help finalize will be minted into a real coin you can purchase. And I know, you hear purchase and you're probably wondering about the price, so let me be crystal clear here. At this moment, I am considering charging $10 for this coin. Because, as of right now with the company I'm using, and assuming I only mint 50 coins, I'll be paying about $7.70 per coin. And as I'm sure everyone here understands, I don't want to sell anything at a loss, but I also don't want to charge an abhorrent sum of money like most YouTubers do. So I think $10 would be a fair price point considering the amount I would have to pay to mint the coins. Oh, and I'm sure you guys are wondering about size too. And since the coin doesn't exist yet, here is a real coin I bought from the UK several years ago that just so happens to be the size I want this coin to be. And here's an American quarter and PS3 controller for comparison. So, how can you best help me finalize this merch? Simple. Join my new Discord server, because if you want me to be honest, I am chronically online and Discord is just simply the best way to communicate with me. Another benefit of this Discord will also be serving as a hub for former and current military the world over to come together in one spot. You may not believe this, but I would love to cover games where you don't play as the US, UK, or Russia. However, that also means I'll need a large supply of veterans and troops from across the world, and Discord will streamline this process majorly. After all, if I ever make a medals video for Alien Anarchy, it would be a lot easier to just ask a Brazilian veteran on my Discord rather than hunt one down online who also happens to speak English. Oh, and graphic designers. As you probably noticed in this video, Americans get really high quality PNGs for all of our awards, yet the Brits and Soviets, I had to settle for real images of questionable quality. Personally, I would love to have real, high-quality PNG images made for all of the awards displayed here today, especially because it'll make future projects a lot easier. So, graphic designers, you will also have a huge place on this server because, truthfully, I need you. Oh, and of course, all other types of fan are welcome, Metal Gear especially. I have no trouble socializing with you guys at all, and there is a damn good reason I try to respond to a lot of my comments. Of course, however, to be fair as well, anyone who helps me with designing graphics for medals, the challenge coin, or even just helps me with details about their country's military will always receive early access to these videos. So there's even a bit of a material benefit to joining the Discord if you want to help me out directly. And with all that said, this video is finally done. Feel free to comment down below which COD game you want to see next, and if I had to guess, the original Modern Warfare is probably going to be the popular pick, but you never know. You guys will probably pick Call of Duty Vanguard because you've got to the point you want to torture me.